Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of DEI After 5. We are going to have a guest today, and I am so excited because we are now in the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month. And one of the things that I know I have been seeing quite a bit of is, hey, what's going on with all of these cultural celebrations that corporations were doing? I was noticing that there were several consultants and speakers that were saying they were not seeing the same push for speakers around Black History Month or His History Month, or some of the other celebratory months. And so I wanted to have a conversation about that because even though organizations are still trying to figure this out, these celebrations are still very important. So my guest today is Hernan Tagliani, who is a multicultural marketer, consultant, all of the things, has been doing this work for quite a while. And so, Hernan, I want to welcome you to the show.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So, for folks who do not know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am the president and founder of Tagdiani Multicultural. We're a multicultural ad agency, national one. We have been in business for 20 years almost, helping brands from different part of the United States to reach and engage multicultural consumers effectively and efficiently through a culturally relevant approach. Besides running the agency, I'm a best-selling author, business speaker, and contributing writing to Forbes magazine, Entrepreneur, the business journals for 11 years about D&I, Hispanic market, and multicultural consumers.
I love this. So, anyone that has watched this show or knows anything about me, so I did multicultural, well, inclusive marketing, I should say, is what the title was, for several years. And I'm always fascinated to find out the folks who have come into this work from a marketing or a communications standpoint, because it's all about audience, right? It's all about knowing your audience. And so I think it's a natural progression to get into this work from that perspective. So I want to dive right in and talk about, we are now at this beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month. I am noticing that there is not a lot of social media celebrations going on around that. What are you seeing, and what are organizations doing right now?
Yeah, I have seen similar to what you're saying. Some companies they are not being proactive enough. They're being a little quiet. However, there are some other companies that, when it comes to multicultural consumers, that's their bread and butter. That they are being proactive and they are, doing some campaigns during Hispanic Heritage Month and posting on social media and engaging these. So, a great example of this is Elf Beauty, that they have been very loud about multicultural consumers. It's part of their DNA, and they have been growing the brand for the past, I believe, 25 consecutive quarters, especially in 2025. The brand has been growing and has been very, very proactive. They have a very big campaign out there, the Dix, that talks about, the importance of being diverse in the corporate world, embracing women, people of color. That's part of the DNA of the organization, that they have been doing great business. Well, Costco, as you know, has been doing good with Hispanics. Now we know the Target as a brand, they have been having some challenges with sales, and the president that they have, I believe, for 11 years stepped down.
Mhm.
So we start seeing this effect, and now more than ever, you can neglect the growth of this audience. Multicultural consumers is driven by U.S. Hispanic growth, and now in Hispanic Heritage Month, this is an audience that brands cannot neglect anymore moving forward. And why I'm saying this is very simple: is 44% of consumers at the present time are multicultural, and by 2027, that number will increase to 48%. Um, Millennials and Gen Zs, more than 50% are multicultural, and they are the ones who are going to be driving this growth. So being silent at this time and not engaging with them is saying a lot about your brand, and what basically, how much do you believe in that audience and you care about it. So I always tell brand, this is the time for you to be loud, to be bold,
Yeah.
and to share exactly where you stand and to have empathy with your consumers and tell them we hear you, we value, we respect you, we care about your business. So we're going to start seeing some effects I foresee in 2026 for those brands who are not taking this growth into consideration.
So there's a couple of things. I know we don't mind getting a little bit into politics here, but there are some things where, there are brands that are absolutely capitulating. They are terrified. They are bending the knee, as some say, because, you know, of the rhetoric around like anti DEI. Well, one, there's this misnomer of what DEI actually is. And so I think going with that, that's part of the issue. But I love how you just spoke to the statistics, right? The numbers do not lie. We are going into a much more culturally diverse um, audience base across the United States. That is not changing. Though there are methodologies that are being used right now to
Mhm.
try to curb that. What we're seeing on the news is one thing, but the other part of that is there are quite a number of people that are being detained that are being let go as well, right? Because it's false imprisonment. Um, that's a whole other show. But what I think is important is the numbers are going to continue to increase. You spoke to the generations and how I believe it's Gen Alpha is about 50%
Yeah.
multicultural. So claiming one or two or more races, right, as they're checking off census information. And so that diversity is going to continue to happen regardless of what policies are taking place. So as organizations are thinking about long-term efforts and long-term goals, what I hear you saying is they need to really have a plan for the long term and not necessarily what's happening right here and right now.
Correct. And I see these over and over with many brands. We as a society, we tend to be very reactive instead of proactive. And we're going right now through a consumer evolution driven by minorities. And within that minority group, Hispanics are taking the lead. Something that I want to highlight is that at the present time, 67% of the Hispanic population are US born. They are Americans. So
Mhm.
the growth is domestic. It's not people crossing the border. The growth is domestic. We're around 45% third generation Hispanics. So at the same time, around 52% are part of middle and upper class with 11% affluent. So they have the money, they have the disposable income. They are really willing and excited to do business with brands. It's just brands are not catering to them in a culturally relevant way, in a way that truly invite them to be part of that conversation, that truly recognize them all year long. So what I always tell brand is, you really want to grow your brand, how you're going to grow it if you don't embrace consumer evolutions. A lot of the
Mhm.
CMOs, a lot of the CEOs, they are more interested in the short-term gains rather than the long-term growth. So, and that's a problem, because if you're neglecting multicultural consumers, how do you think you're going to grow your brand when 52% of Gen Zs are millennials, when 43% of millennials, 52% of Gen Zs are multicultural, 43% of millennials are multicultural. So, and then within that gap, 27% of Gen Zs are Hispanics, and a little over 25% are of millennials are also Hispanics. So, how are you going to grow your brand if you are neglecting this audience? So,
Yeah.
that's something that I always bring to the table. For me, it's an educational process with executives and CMOs, helping understand that there is a huge business opportunity for them to tap. It's just being willing to embrace what we're going through and and understand the consumers overall, their wants, their needs, their desires. This is not what I always see as we're talking about Hispanic Heritage Month. A lot of the brands, they just wait for this time to do something. Or the same with Black History. It's a one-off, it's a check,
Yeah.
check mark. But the reality is that is not going to create and generate the return on investments and the growth of your brand that you're looking for. This has to be part of an overall annual campaign, and also of an overall arch of your multicultural strategy or your marketing strategy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just about to talk about. I think what Target did right prior to their guffaw was they had a long-term strategy. They were investing in women-owned businesses, Hispanic-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses, not just for the cultural months, but how can we highlight these brands throughout the year so that it doesn't feel as if it's a checkbox, but it is a true investment. So it was across the board and with some depth, right? And I think that because they were so invested on the front end, when they made the decisions that they made, it hurt them so much more because people thought that they were true. And they were like, yeah, no, never mind. And so I think that that's why they're hemorrhaging the way that they are, because people felt they were lied to. And so that speaks to the brand, right? That speaks to who they are as an organization. And unfortunately, um, there has been, they've seen the bitter side of that backlash. Hey, listen, this conversation is getting so good that we had to break it up into two. So join us again next week as we continue this conversation with Hernan, and understanding more about what's going on with multicultural marketing and what we need to do to get to these audiences. So tune in next week. Have a good one. DEI After 5 is produced by the Leon Thomas Group. For more information, go to theleonthomasgroup.com.